Welcome to the Dad Low Podcast. This week I am joined by my dad, Vince, Mark, Colin, and we're going to talk about movies that inspired us and left a good impression on us. So, actually, I want to add something else too. Event movies that we would go see as a whole crew that were, literally events. It was like we were waiting that week, just planning it out of us going to getting off work and going to see a movie.
Well, that's where I am now. I mean, I don't go see a movie unless there's a reason for it to be on that big screen because there are movies made to be on the big screen. Um, but we've got some pretty decent sized televisions in our home now. Some of them you can watch on television and it's not going to rob from the effects or, the film itself. But if I'm going to go see a Star Wars movie, I want to see the big thing coming over me and I want to see and feel the rumble of the seats in the theater and and then when it passes by it says the bumper sticker that Mel Brooks was here
Or We Break from No One.
or we break for no one. Well, yeah.
Mark's lost in thought here.
He's trying to figure out what movie is
I
that?
will say this. Let's start off with how theaters have changed since
Yeah.
we were at dawn of time age.
Yeah, so
A lot of people now have never had the experience of not having comfortable seats or not having surround sound systems. And
or a beer.
Stadium chairs, you just get these little fold down things. You sat down, your back hurt, you ate your popcorn, you watched a movie, and you loved it or you hated it. Now it's a whole experience within itself.
Well, it's, as Mark would say, it's like going on a mini vacation in costs, so you want to be comfortable when you're watching it.
It really
But
is.
But it's funny now that we've made the seat so comfortable, people will recline and fall asleep in the movie and they're going, and you're like, come on, get off me for you for a place to put your drink. It's supposed to be you get the right, they get the right for them, and
Who
they
gave
get the
that
right for
rule?
them. And then they come in and stick it right
The way
on.
they were made, Mark. If you go back, he's right because the cup holder was always to the right hand side.
Okay, I can
We'll
see
pause
that.
while you go look that up.
Yeah. Well,
I just, I
Mark's
just
going, I
don't
don't
think.
see that in the rule book.
Yeah, that's not in the rules.
It was a
But
way
yeah,
the
I
seats
see
were
that.
made.
Yeah, you're right. I see that.
I remember going to dollar theaters and the floor would be sticky
Oh
and
God.
you hear the crackling of the popcorn that had not never been swept up and you'd
Or
be like,
crackling popcorn
okay,
on
I'm
sticky floor, it snap. They sound like Velcro when you walk.
and then in those event movies like we're talking about, like when people would throw their popcorn up at the biggest part over here and I'll be standing up and then you see the poor guy who's got to come in and clean a theater and he's like, there's got to be a better job out there
Yeah.
than this. Because I would hate to have to clean up a theater after something like that.
You got a
Well,
baby. You got a baby.
I think it's really funny how we went from like we started getting these big event movies. Everybody go see them, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden, kind of almost out of nowhere, we started getting these like midnight showings or
Well,
showings that started at midnight and
yeah,
then were like three or four showings. 4 people are going to the movies at 4 a.m.
Yeah,
Um,
Rocky Horror.
Rock. Well, it's there were a lot of movies that when they came out were great, but they didn't get the audience, they didn't get the advertising for whatever reason.
Right.
They weren't a financial blockbuster. But if you remember, movies wanted to stick around in theaters longer. They didn't come out for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then they were gone. Think about Blade. Blade was in the theater for a year at AMC. I mean, in the same theater. I remember going to see other movies, walking by, and I'm being, Blade is still here. And I went and saw it like 4 times in the theater, and then it came out on I guess DVD. I don't think it came out on VHS. It might have, but it was out for rental, but still showing at the theater. And I was like, I'd rather go see it in the theater because, like when he threw the thing and the thing went around the room because they tracked that one motion on the camera. Though when the technology started making the films much better, we started seeing movies more often. So they stayed in theaters longer. And that was the way it was. Jaws, Star Wars, 2001 A Space Odyssey, Alien. Those were long running films. Blade was the first successful superhero movie of modern times. I mean, you can't compare it to like Superman, which is really the grandfather of all superhero movies.
So you don't consider the Michael Keaton Batman's is
that's after Michael Keaton's movie came out almost 10 years. Yeah, 89. And Superman was in
No.
72,
right.
75.
But
75.
what I meant was you said that of the modern era for Blade. So do you not consider Batman modern era? That's what I was asking.
Oh, you know what? I would have to say yes, because we had a series. Batman was kind of like the ending of that genre.
Okay.
And then all of a sudden you had Jurassic Park coming in. Soon after that, you had, I can't remember, T2 when it came out. You had Abyss.
91.
And so you had all these other movies that were being done because studios, and you can really take it all the way back to Star Wars, because when Star Wars was so successful, it was really the first considered blockbuster. But even in the 30s and 40s, there were movies that made 100 times what it cost to make, but by our standards today, they weren't successful. We now, if it's going to be successful, it needs to make between 800 million and $1 billion. Even if the movie only costs 230 million to make, because there's so much overhead now in these films. Advertising, they got to edit them. If they're going to put them out in another country, they might have to redo the movie, some of the shots, because they aren't allowed. China is one of the growing markets, or is one of the leading markets in movies, and people want to get into that market, but they have to edit their films down because they don't accept certain things.
Yeah. I read someplace that Godzilla versus Kong was already released in China. Is that something you guys have heard also?
What, Kong and Godzilla?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's already been over in China and stuff like that for at least a week, and they're saying it's already approaching 100 million.
I would have thought that it would have been in Japan first, and I haven't heard that it was opened in Japan yet. But I guess they want to make their money up front. That's the problem now. Whereas a movie had to be good to make that kind of money, now you just have to plan it right, build up hype, build up some controversy, get people talking about it, and then they'll come in that first weekend, and that's when they make the majority of their money. Godzilla, the Devlin and Roland Emmerich and what's his name? I hate that movie. The iguana that can reproduce with itself. That was considered a success because of how much money it made opening weekend. But I wouldn't put it up there with Godzilla, King of Monsters. I wouldn't put it up there with Kong of Skull Island. I wouldn't even put it up there with Kong. What's his name's King Kong remake? Peter Jackson's.
But
so
I don't.
It's all about getting it out and getting that money up front, and then they don't care what happens after that.
Just for the record, I'm looking it up right now. It looks like the first big blockbuster movie that actually did something was Jaws.
No, because I look at old films and there's a really good guy who, at the beginning of every review of a movie, talks about how much the movie made compared to how much it cost in the year that it came out. And there are a lot of films that have made, like I said, compared to now, if it cost $20,000 to make, I mean, 20 million to make, right? And they made 260. Back then, that was considered a hit. It was considered a blockbuster. Our standards of blockbuster now are totally different than what used to be. And if you go onto my Facebook, I post his stuff all the time. I used to go on and do all that the movie look, Box Office Mojo and all those other ones to see, because you also have to look at how long that those movies stay out, because some of them get a re-release and that money still goes into their totals. That's how when they re-released Titanic took back the title of the most grossing the most money.
Yeah.
And so that's the new thing. Oh, well, it wasn't bad enough that they made a ton of money. Let's re-release it and just recoup some more money on it, and they do it. It does real big. Like, and he really re-released it in a small market in China and it boosted him over the Endgame and one other movie.
Oh, Avatar.
So there's a lot of games going on in movies now and playing of money. A good calculation used to be whatever the production cost, the reshoots plus the advertisement plus the distribution generally was whatever it costs to shoot the film, there would be a 3/4 equal amount spent on other things. And that was how much they made. It could turn a $150 million movie and they spent another 100 million on all that stuff, then it would be a 250 million movie at cost for them. Now you've got actors wanting a percentage of the take coming in from the gross and all these other things. You got theaters being squeezed on the margins because they make the money they make doesn't come from the films. They can make it off of the concessions. They don't like long movies because it cuts into how many times they can air a film during the day. They want a short film that can be shown, 3 or 4 more times a day than a 3.5 or 4 hour long movie. So how you look at what's being spent, how much a movie makes is really questionable, because now they also get paid insurance. If they don't make a certain amount off their movie, they have this insurance that will pay them some of their losses on the film. So some people make films that they know they're going to lose money on. You have
Spit it out.
Well, I was saying that other thing and I lost my train of thought. It's just that they won't tell how much extras. Like, we never heard how much the extra footage cost for Schneider, or we never heard for other movies for other people where they went back and sometimes a pickup can be the whole movie, like they've had movies they were 3/4 of the way done, or like with the Exorcist sequels, were done, tested horribly, pushed off to a shelf, went back, refilmed the entire movie, released that at the theaters, didn't make any money. So when it came time to release them on Blu-ray or DVD, they released both of those versions of the movie to recoup their costs. But for tax reasons, they don't want to tell exactly how much money costs them to make anymore.
Well, here's my question. What do we actually care about that?
It affects the quality of the movies they make.
But so you just don't watch the movies you don't want to watch. You watch the good stuff and go on with it. Like, I personally, they can spend all the money in the world if they want to on a movie. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. It's not
No,
on
it's
us.
true, but well, it does affect us because say you're waiting on a movie to be made about a character, and they're finally going to do it, and they make this movie and it's mediocre and it doesn't do well. So one of two things are going to happen. It's going to go and set on a shelf for 10 years, and we won't see that character done in a movie again. Or you're going to have somebody who goes, okay, I think we can do better. I'm going to greenlight another movie with this character at half the budget. So if a movie is perceived not to do well, like John Carter, which John Carter made made Disney money, but it was in their eyes a flop. It cost too much money. They didn't make the money they expected, and it's going to be another 10 years before we get a John Carter movie. I've been waiting for that forever. So
Well,
it does affect us.
But here's the question: did you like the original John Carter?
I loved it.
Well, then there you go.
I wanted to see more of it. Am I going to get to? No, and I have to write it myself or draw it myself or pay somebody to do it if I wanted to, because Disney is adverse to risk. All these big studio only do blockbusters. They slot in 3 or 4 a year, hoping to make enough money off of that to keep running, and then they greenlight all these independent films. And then they're going out, and the people who are trying to produce and make those are going out and trying to get money, or trying to get, like, have you ever watched a new movie where the opening sequence of the film has like 10 different people who've helped produce the movie? You know, you'll see like the logo of 10 movies. That's how many people they had to go to get the funding to make this movie work and be paid for. So, and that's why we're seeing more independent films kind of falling off. So if you look back, you could have 10 blockbusters in a year back in the day. Great films, you know. We don't get that anymore. And it's gotten worse with the pandemic, of course, because there's nothing to air. But
well, and that's kind of going away now. You know, even a lot of these movies, like, what was that Ryan Reynolds movie that was straight to Netflix?
That was about Free Guy.
No, are you talking about the one where he brings the people together as spies?
Yeah, he's basically Batman putting together a group of superheroes to go around and assassinate people.
And that's getting a sequel. But Ryan Reynolds funded most of that himself.
Right, I believe that. I mean, it was a great choice, and I thought it was a great movie.
It was an outstanding movie, and that some people, you know, it's, you know, go back to my saying, it's a great film that very few people watched.
Well, I think that was also because it just ended up on Netflix. Like, I think if it would have gotten a bigger theatrical release
I think it would have done real well.
I think it would have done really well. Yeah.
I mean, some of those stunt shots in between the buildings and stuff, and that was up there James Bond level stuff, you know.
Yeah, it was really good. And then that other one with Theron, whatever her name is, Charlize Theron. Yeah, that Charlize one. Theron. The what was that called? Something Guard. The Old Guard.
Old Guard, where it was Will Smith's. What was the one where he was the old part of the old Immortals? And he'd been around a while. Hancock. That to me, when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is a female version of Hancock. Just like I saw another movie recently, and I was like, okay, this is just that one redone. That's another thing. When a movie is successful, everybody wants to capitalize on it, so we get a lot of similar movies. If you remember, we were going to get finally a I keep wanting to say Scarlet Witch, but that's not what I want to say. Black Widow film. So while that was all going around and being worked on, and we were, you know, everybody was hyped for it, there was a movie called Red Sparrow that came out, which was about, I think she was a ballerina who gets taken by the Russian government and turned into an
Yeah.
assassin. And I was like, this is Black Widow's story. So now
Yeah.
how do you do it? How do you do Black Widow now without people making the comparison to this other movie that came out first when Black Widow is the older character?
Right. Well, then you do what they did. You introduce her as a character in another movie, and then get her popular on her own through those movies, and then you can do it.
Well, and I believe, glad David's not on here, that if you're going to be world building, you want to do that with your characters. You want to give the audience a reason to
Yeah.
watch them,
Right.
you know, and care about what happens to them. Don't just, you know, grab a Yahtzee shaker, go, boom, these are the characters, and wow, they're all here. That was my biggest problem with Justice League and the whole Snyder thing, and I don't want to talk about that. But if you're going to build on a universe, you need to have characters that feel real, have lives, something that the audience becomes invested in, and then they're going to follow this on through multiple movies. If Star Wars had been a failure and everybody thought Luke was a whiny Darth Vader, that's why the Star Wars movies, the first three, was so good for two reasons. Because Lucas had a clear vision for those three movies. The characters were well rounded. They were a little cliches, but of course, what's he trying to build? He's using mythology. And then he was smart enough to get two different directors to film. Basically, in my day, were the second and third. Now, you know, they became
5 and
4,
6.
5, and 6. But back in the day, when I saw Star Wars, it said Star Wars. There was no New Hope at the bottom of that on the screen. And I think one of the problems with filming today is if you're going to have somebody who leads the development of a universe, they cannot be directing the films that they're making because they get tied up in the
Minutia of the movie.
Yeah, and they're not seeing things. It's the trees versus the forest. You need somebody who can come back and look at the big picture and kind of guide, and then you need the people who are directing and just making each film good. That didn't happen with the prequels. Lucas was the manager of all of them. You ended up with a whiny Darth Vader. You ended up with a
Jar Jar Binks.
well, I'm not even going to go into Jar Jar, but a disjointed storyline there, and that worked itself out by the third film. But there were some problems between the first and the second film, and so
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying. But you know, if it weren't for one film to break through, others wouldn't break through behind it. Great movies stand on the shoulders of previous films. I mean, if you think about one of the most expensive movies ever created was, you would think maybe Gone with the Wind, but no, it was the Anthony and Cleopatra film. So you there's a lineage there where you can actually see science fiction changed with 2001: A Space Odyssey, because we started trying to put more realism into space. You could tell that 2001: A Space Odyssey was directed, created by people who understood the science. They wanted to make it as realistic as possible. All right. So then you have Star Wars come along, and Lucas was like, yeah, that's great. I love that. But I want to make it feel lived in. So we get Star Wars. It's a very dirty, lived in universe. Everything looks like it's been rebuilt. You know, he's probably rebuilt the engine in his land speeder a dozen times. And then all of a sudden you get Aliens. And Aliens is the perfect trucker movie ever created, because those guys are not heroes. They're nothing but long haul truckers transporting ore home, who get messed over by the company who hired them and decides to use them as bait. but it was the world, man. I just when went the first time I saw Aliens, I skipped my last class in school, and me and a buddy of mine ran to the theater. And we got there too late. The film had already started, and I was like, "Man, I can't wait. I gotta go do something after this." And the guy goes, "Look, I'll let you in. Watch this. Watch it up to when you came in, and you can leave." So me and my buddy Pete were sitting there. I knew a little bit about what might happen with the chest burster. Pete had no idea. So when it got to that point, I was like, oh, so I'm already getting up in my seat. Like I know something's coming. And he's just, this is the greatest thing ever. Sin cheese. And when that happened, neither one of us had ever seen anything like that. Now everybody's jaded. But to see that the first time on screen and that thing come out of him, well, I'm amazed and just stunned at it and how beautiful it was done. And I'm just all into it. He falls over the seat. This is a football player, big guy, falls over the seat. I hear him crawl across the floor, and I hear him, tum, 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 and I hear the door go, and I'm like, what the hell? He left me. What if the monster was coming through the screen? My best friend just ran out on me. And he comes walking back in, and he sits down. He goes, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that. I had a group. I ain't going to say what he said. But he sat there, and I was like, at least you didn't scream like a little girl. And he goes, I bit my tongue to stop. And he goes, this is the greatest movie ever. And I said, are you going to stay and watch the rest of it? Or are you going to spend it looking through the door? And he goes, don't make me beat you up. And I said, okay, that sounds like a good thing. And so we sat and watched that movie, waited through everything, waited till it went through the credits again, with all intentions of leaving that film and going home after I got to the part where I came in. And the next thing I knew, the movie's over. And I'm just still sitting there. And the guy walks up and he goes, you didn't leave, huh? He goes, don't worry about it. I would have stayed too. And then we left the theater and we talked about that for 5 or 6 days constantly. That, you know, there are groundbreaking films that make way for the future movies to come. And that was one of them. And it changes how we approach and we look at cinema. And that's what I'm afraid of now, is that you don't get that. We get a lot of copycats. We get a lot of the same movies done over and over again. But occasionally you will get like Avatar, which was, okay, it's a cowboys and Indians movie. So, well, aliens with truckers in space. But the visual effects for that movie were groundbreaking. You know, because remember, at some point, once CGI got popular, everybody was using it, but not everybody was using it good. Can you think about like Aliens 4? How bad the CGI aliens were? If it takes you out of the film because you go, you know, this doesn't feel real, I'm not afraid, I'm not into this, because you keep dragging me out of my suspension of reality, it's not going to work for me, and I'm just going to not want to watch it. I judge a movie by how many times I lose that ability to get lost in a film.
I've never seen Avatar.
I didn't tell you anything, but it's visually beautiful, man.
I've never seen it, and I don't have any desire to see it. It's like Mark was saying, you can spend, you know, umpteen dollars and be one of the most successful movies in history. There's nothing about it that makes me want to go, I gotta have that, I gotta see that. Tony swears by it. He loves it. And he every time I talk to him, he's like, man, you see Avatar yet? No, I haven't seen Avatar yet.
Oh, it's funny. There are a lot of people who go, I'll never go see it. And then they go see something and they're like, wow, you know, I really liked it. And it has to do with your expectations. If you suspend your expectations, you walk in with no grievances to a film, that's one thing. But if you go in with preconceived ideas about it and you're looking for bad things, you're going to find them. There's no
Yeah.
perfect film.
That's and I'm gonna say it's the first one there. I mean, I don't have any expectations for it, and I've heard nothing but good things about it. It's just not. I mean, I'm sure it's a fine film. James Cameron knows what he's doing, and 2 and 3 are coming.
Well, there's going to be 4 of them or 5 of them.
All I know is he's
2 and
shooting and shooting.
well, 2 and 3 are being filmed back to back. Then he's going. No, they're still filming. Nope. He just did an interview last week talking about the production on the film, and Cameron is always doing reshoots. He's another person who will shoot a lot of footage so he gets exactly what he wants. He's also somebody who works with regular actors. All his films, you'll see reoccurring people because he knows that he will get out of them what he needs. Oh, all those great directors of the past who were really hard on the actors to get them to give their best performance. If you do that now, you're evil. You're not driving them to give something a better performance. You're being hateful to them.
Yeah.
Well, to be kind of on the other side of that fence, I also think that it's the approach. Like, nobody should have to deal with somebody in their face screaming. And I think that that's what a lot of people have a problem with, not being redirected, which is, an actor's job is to get directed by the director. That's what they're there for. But it's the approach.
Well, some actors are looking to build their career, and they think they've gotten onto a film that's going to boost them way up. And if it doesn't, then it's not their fault or their performance. It's got to be somebody else. There are directors who are the same way. Right. No, it wasn't me. It's the audience who didn't get my vision. Well, no, you're trying to provide a vision that their expectations will meet, and then they'll come see the movie. And if you want to make your own film, make one and watch it in your house. Make one that people or your audience is wanting, and they'll spend money on it. And if you don't, they won't. But don't then attack your audience because your film didn't make money. And I mean, I'm talking directors who made some. Richard Burton made Burt Lancaster, even made Kirk Douglas so mad he wanted to punch out the director in one film. And then later in his life, Kirk Douglas said, I would have never been able to give that performance if he hadn't driven me to that point. So I really like character actors, because character actors are the ones who prop up your film. John Wayne was John Wayne in every movie. Bruce Willis is the same way, every movie. Kirk Douglas got to be that way. Burt Lancaster could play a multitude of roles. Steve McQueen was one of those who, when he was in a film, he was Steve McQueen. But movies like MASH, which are ensemble casts, where everyone is trying to get themselves in front of the camera and get the most lines. I've been reading a lot lately about like Yul Brynner in the Steve McQueen, and how that Yul Brynner got Steve McQueen in The Magnificent Seven, but then Steve McQueen felt that Yul Brynner had the majority of the lines. Well, he's the lead. So Steve McQueen went to the director, whined, and said, I want to have first rewrites of my own lines. And what he did was they had to hide the script from him. So then he was able to get the script for that day's shooting. And in the morning, he would have already redone it so that he had equal lines to Yul Brynner. The characters aren't the same. They were written to be different so that they would contrast. Once you start trying to act like the main character, you can't. It's like the old saying, too many chiefs, not enough Indians, or too many chefs in the kitchen. They ruin what you're trying to make. And I'm seeing a lot of that same stuff happen today, but it's taken in a total different direction. years these people would go out and eat with each other after they had a big old fight on the on set of a film. I mean, you think about the guy who was in the Dirty Dozen, the lead. um, I can't think of his name. He got into it with Clint Eastwood on the set of Paint Your Wagon, but it was left on the on the stage floor. When they left, they didn't carry those grudges. You might hear about it years later when they wrote it in their little memoirs or their tell-all books. But
Right. Let's circle back to what you were talking about earlier about things that directors did. Let's The Exorcist. All the stuff that William Friedkin did to Linda Blair.
Linda Blair, yeah.
I mean, it helped give her one of the best performances of her career, and it was one of her first ones. But that whole backward thing, to this day, she talks about how her back is screwed up because of it.
Well, isn't she dead now?
Blair? No.
I thought she died recently.
No.
Okay.
No. And then if you want to talk about a movie where they really the actors to get a great role, look at the Blair Witch Project.
Oh, they knew what those guys knew what they were getting into when they went in.
Yeah.
And then that movie.
I mean,
there was an Oscar winner. The best thing that Blair Witch ever did was show that you could world build on the internet, which was very young at that time, because they created legends of the Blair Witch. They created audio files and writings that weren't real. They convinced America that those 3 people died in that woods and it was a real film. And it took them to appear on the stage at the Oscars and go, yes, we're alive, to get people to actually believe it. Because there are enough people, once they see it on the internet, it's got to be true. And so that movie was a genre movie. Okay. It started a genre, but now we're up to our eyeballs in lost footage films. And the best ones now are the ones that are kind of tongue in cheek. They break the fourth wall a little bit. They know what their film is and they run with it and enjoy having fun. They're not trying to make it serious. They're not overly out to scare people. I remember advertisements on television about The Exorcist that people were having heart attacks in that movie.
Oh, yeah. I have all the news.
I saw that movie. I went and saw Inframan because I'd read the book The Exorcist that my mom had in our house. I'm watching Inframan. My brother Mike comes in and he's like sitting next to me and Gene, and he's like, and I'm like, what's the matter with you? He goes, I ain't going back in there. And I was like, is it that bad? And he was like, yeah. So I said, stay and watch Gene. I've already seen this movie 3 times. Let me go and see Mom. And I'm sitting there, and it gets to the part where her head turns around and she's spraying pea soup everywhere. And I bust up laughing. And this lady looked at me from in front of she wasn't directly in front of me. She was really well. She was like, and my mom's like, oh God, you're going to make them think that I raised you wrong. And I'm like, it's another movie about hype. There were moments that scared the hell out of you in The Exorcist, but The Omen was just as good as The Exorcist. There were other, like, I hate to say it, Beyond the Door had more jump scares and was scarier than The Exorcist.
Yeah. Even though there was a Turkish version of it that came out like 8 months later. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. That actually had a lot of really good.
Exorcist. I sat through Exorcist, but Exorcist 3 with George C. Scott with the nurse climbing around on the roof at the hospital after I've killed the person in the bed because she was possessed. That I had to turn it off and walk away. That scene was well crafted. It actually stung me a little bit. And I went, I got to go out of and I went and found my kids who were playing in the park in our apartments. It was like, I need a break. And then I went back and finished watching it.
That was William Bloody, man.
And
Then they
then
said, yes, you can make the Exorcist movie you want to make. He went all in.
it felt more like what a possession movie, because here you have a serial killer who has one of the spirits that was Pazuzu or whatever his name was possessing people with. And so he was talking to that cop, and he was telling him about cases that he should never have known about. And as you see George C. Scott getting it, that kind of got to me, that talked to me. The other George C. Scott, what's the one where he's the writer, Rents the Haunted House, and where the boy was drowned, and he'd kind of lost his ability to write, and by helping this boy find peace, he writes that story in the end and regains his ability to write and tell stories. I love that movie, and I want to say Awakening, but I know that I don't think that's it. Horrible with names. And I don't like torture porn. As far as I'm concerned, that stuff you can, I no. That is not
come on.
scary. That it's
Saw
not
movies are great. No, but you know what? To me, most movies aren't scary. Like all of those horror movies, they don't. I mean, sure, there might be a jump scare here and there, but the movies that freak me out are things like Seven, where you've
Seven
got
was well crafted movie. I love
right.
Seven.
Seven. It's those kind of people that scare me. Like that's the reason I say the Joker is one of the biggest villains out there, because the Joker could be real. Like there probably are psychotic, crazy people out there that just aren't, I guess.
Altogether.
The one thing about the comic book characters is obviously they do escape and they're out there. Most of the time those types of people get captured at some or killed at some point, and that's the end of it. But I mean, those people scare me more than Jason or Freddy or Godzilla.
Well, okay, we had Halloween. Michael Myers was the first supernatural type killer like that. Then Friday the 13th came out, and I didn't feel the same watching that movie as I did watching Halloween. It was a different type of scare. And then at the end, to have it just be some nuts, spoiler alert, nutso mama who's doing the killing. I know people have said, oh, if you look across the lake, you see the man standing. That's Jason. He's there. I don't think he had anything to do with what was going on. He was a red herring for the first movie, and they killed off their main antagonist. And so what are we going to do? Yeah, what are we going to do now? What are we going to? Well, we've got this throwaway character. Let's bring him in. And they never really explained how he got to be who he was, how he was able to be shot, have his head, split open with an axe, set at the bottom of a lake for 10 years until we got to Jason Takes Manhattan. And then they play up on the fact that he was a little boy. His mom made a deal with a demon who possessed him, and that is how we got Jason. And that was the reason that movie ended the way it did. And I was like, well, that's really cool, but end it there, because now you've ruined the character. You've given an explanation. You want to give hints, but you don't want to ever fully go that direction. You want to keep people guessing and trying to become, like I keep saying, be invested in it. Oh, I think it was this origin, or I think it was this origin, or that. That's what keeps them coming into the theater. Once you know, it's just like, Moonlighting, when the two characters kissed. It was over. The series was done at that point. They doomed it because everybody was waiting, anticipating that kiss. And when they got it, they were like, okay, where's it going to go from here?
All right. What do you want to talk about next, Vince?
So where are we all going off with that conversation first off, so I can put my 2 cents in just towards that end part?
I think we were just meandering around different topics. I don't think there was any focus there.
No, because they just got done, and Anna's putting Edward to sleep right now. So just to go off of that topic, though, I mean, you know, with things that scare us. And I really want to do an episode where we talk about scary things in October. But the thing is like, for me, it's the practical effects and believability. So The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, all that stuff. I mean, even that film now, if you watch it now, stands the test of time. Like, if you're watching, it's like you're looking into a window. It doesn't look dated. The special effects don't look dated.
I mean, the hairstyles maybe a little bit, but
yeah,
that's
but I
about
mean,
it.
you can tell that you're looking removed from like
Even hairstyles come back in and out throughout history. We always
Yeah.
go back to what
But
was.
yeah, you're right, Vinny. It absolutely holds up very well.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's a combination of people who knew what they were doing, and people who could convey it and put it up there on the screen. And
Do you remember?
everybody involved with it knew what they were doing, and they did it right.
But it was a flop. It made no money. Look it
yeah,
up.
and unfortunately, it was competing against
E.T.
E.T. And you know, as much as I liked E.T., it's like I like The Thing more,
Yeah.
and I wanted that movie to succeed because it was just a good story. But it was playing up off of the whole Who Goes There story, and also playing up off the original, you know, The Thing movie with the carrot monsters.
But
But
James Arness, yeah.
Yeah,
The-
and if you go back and look at those two in comparison, E.T. and The Thing, E.T. is still recognized as a great, great movie,
yeah, it's a good movie.
but The Thing has gotten cult status.
Yeah,
Well,
Right.
here's
It's
well,
actually
and
talking about
that's the thing. When I went and saw that, I had already seen E.T. with a couple of friends. All right, saw it with my kids. Great child movie. Yet the director felt he needed to change things throughout history, like dropping guns, putting in walkie-talkies, and
Sure.
other things in the film that if it was truly good, he shouldn't have done that. You don't go back and mess
yeah, you don't
with a
change.
classic.
You don't change just because
You
of
don't
that.
see John Carpenter going, wow, I messed that up. I need to go back and fix that, you know? And when I went and saw John Carpenter, when I went and saw The Thing, I couldn't get one person to go see that movie with me. I went when it was 98 degrees on a summer in Houston into that theater by myself. And the theater was comfortably cool, but it wasn't cold. And by the end of that friggin' movie, I had wished I had a parka on and I was shivering and I was like, why am I so cold? And I looked around and other people in the theater were doing the same thing. So a movie that can strike a part of your mind and just bring you into that film, those are the ones that become cult classics. Highlander wasn't good in the theater. It wasn't until these movies hit the midnight movies that they became cult classics, and then they got a following. You can
VHS.
the
stuff,
dude.
I mean,
Well, I'm talking about the other movies like that, like the Dude, Big Lebowski didn't do well. Cult following. There's
Yeah.
something about these movies that stick in your mind for 10, 20, 30 years, and they're still relevant. And then you have a movie that should be relevant that, like, who goes and sees a movie like E.T. anymore? Why? Because it's because in society, we're not like,
We're not innocent anymore.
Candy. We're not a cool candy eating guy. There are people now that would go, E.T.'s hanging out with those kids. There must be something wrong with that alien. But you have those movies that hit us somewhere deep inside and we connect with it, and we will be showing it to our kids, and our kids will be showing it to their kids generations down. And they won't be remakes. They won't be redone. They'll be that exact same movie.
Well, and so you got and it brings me to my situation anyway with film anyway. I wanted to be a director. I was going to school for it, but I had to move out of Houston because they don't have really good schools here that teach film degrees. I had to move to Austin or move somewhere else. But it was because of John Carpenter and James Cameron that I found the love of film. The funny thing is like my dad had that big shelf of recorded movies he had that he just recorded them off of HBO and stuff. And I remember I was wanting something to watch because I was up late one night and I saw Big Trouble in Little China, and I remember watching with my dad, but I didn't have any really memories of it. And I was what, 12,
Yeah.
and at the time when I watched it again, and I loved it. It was just such a big impact to me because I mean, at the time, Mortal Kombat was out. I was already a fan of Kurt Russell. It just hit me in the right spot that I started liking film even more than what I already did.
I still have that on VHS.
You still have a VHS
Okay,
player?
don't say
I
that,
have
Mark.
5 of them.
I have one in my
Wow.
bedroom, Mark. Don't go
Wow.
there.
I do video conversion.
Oh yeah, all right, that makes sense.
I mean, it's part of the whole studio thing. But
Yeah.
Yeah,
I use VCRs to master audio to
right.
because it gives you that analog sound.
Vince, you have no excuse.
I like VHS on some things, just
Mm-mm.
like I like vinyl records. The imperfections in it make it better. Some people want the best. They want it to be digitally crisp, but then it
Yeah.
loses something in it.
Well, okay,
It's just like going and listening to a live
That's a whole nother
band
story for me.
or
yeah, that's
playing
All
their
right,
record.
back on topic.
so that's a whole other thing. But
Yeah,
I like film. The thing is, it's like I was talking to Andrew when the Blu-ray release of They Live came out, and he was like, he never noticed on the VHS or when he would saw it on TV that it was raining at the beginning of the movie until he saw the high def
Yeah.
touch up. And it's like there's things that you miss that with low standard quality video that you get with the high def that you can see. And
Yeah, like
Um,
Colin's raining in his den right now. Flip back over to him.
he'd have to talk.
What?
Talk, say something so you
I'm
can become
talking. Stop talking.
He's just saying because of the video quality is a little grainy.
your
Oh,
video.
Jeez.
It looks like it's raining in your room. I'm like,
You want to go
every
back?
time-
Go back and watch the
There it
playback
is.
of the stuff.
Look at the
looks
rain.
Like,
Look at the rain.
It looks like it looks like VHS film. If you go back
Well,
and
it-
watch the stuff, it looks.
Yeah, it does. It does look like VHS film, but it's
Yeah,
funny because
and
I actually like it because it gives
I'm
it like
actually
this whole
talking fast.
gives us like this Matrix look, like the coding is actually there and he's being coded into the world, which goes back to the whole thing when he does the video of the
the
background.
background.
Yeah,
which
But-
cracks me up about that is that VHS, when it's first out, it's pretty crisp. It loses detail the more it's played. I remember
Right.
you playing movies I had so much that they would stretch every time it was rewound and everything. And then so you'd be watching it and all of a sudden it would just be, what happened to this? Why does it look so horrible? And then I realized that Vince has watched it 50 times.
yeah. Well,
And I'd be like,
that's a whole other thing too because I remember I watched Star Wars. I mean, A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi on loop. And the funny thing is that I was like scared one day when Dad came home that he was going to find me watching it again. So I stopped it and I actually hit play. So I was record. So I was recording what was on TV. So I messed it up and I was like, crap. So I like, okay, Uncle Gene, Uncle Mike, I want the Star Wars VHS movie. So I give him to Dad as a.
I remember one day I walked in and he was crying in the living room. And I was like, what's the matter? And he goes, well, Transformers. And this is before the movie came out. I had recorded all the TV shows so he could watch them, during the day. He watched it so much that it broke. And he was sad because it had broke. And I was like, well, I can understand that because now I have to figure out how to get all those episodes back because I recorded every one of them as they aired. And we didn't have people releasing whole seasons back.
DVRs and stuff. It was like you had to program your VCR to record at this time. Or before that, it was, all right, I'm going to get up at like 6 a.m. and make sure this is all ready to go with coffee and push record.
TV
Wait.
Guide was your program.
Yeah.
We may have to start all over again because Vince keeps coming up with all the time he like copyright infringed all these shows. He's gonna get sued.
No, because everybody had, as long as I didn't air
It's
them.
fair use.
Yeah,
It-
as long
yeah,
as I didn't
technically.
air them and
It was-
charge
it was
people
part
to
of the fair
watch
use
them,
laws at that time.
I'm good.
You know, when you had that girl you liked and you made like your own mixtape for
All copyright infringement.
her. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
I mean, we all did it, but you know,
Well, the thing is now when we buy a CD of music, and we own that, right? But
Right,
you
and then
can
you
be
get fair use of one copy.
of one
Yeah.
copy, and you're like,
Well, if
why
I
is
split
that?
it up
You
into
know?
like 12 CDs and just take one song off that, that's one copy of
Yeah, that's still fair use.
yeah. Then I
It's
got
like,
the other 12 songs on that album to be able to do the same thing for.
I'm gonna make a donut. I'm gonna sell it to you, but you can't eat it because it's actually mine. I'm just letting you hold it. If you want to eat it, there'll be an extra
You can look
charge.
through it, but that's all.
Yeah. But
Wow.
I don't know. There was like really like magical.
Mark's trying to
time.
figure out how that works because I know there's something wrong with that.
there is, but I'm just
Yeah.
gonna skip it.
I'll edit things out. Don't worry. But there was a time when like
No,
film was
son,
a
hold
big
on.
thing.
He's not upset about that it's in here. He's upset because he can't figure out what's wrong with what I said.
Oh
And
no, I
didn't-
did. I'm just gonna skip it though. Let's move on.
All right, can I add one quick thing that's a caveat of what we were talking about earlier? Versus
Yeah.
old quality versus new quality and upgrading and reissuing. Sometimes for me that's a really good thing because the fact that the format of the movie has changed. It went from being 4:8
4:3,
to
yeah.
6:9.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
And then
you,
you got to see what was going on in the bigger picture and what the director wanted.
Right.
Well, yeah.
I sent Vince a guy who is restoring all three of the original Star Wars movies. And each time you make a copy of even if you did it's a digital, you lose something in the quality of each copy. So they have to go back if they're going to restore it, have to find either the masters of it, which
Yeah.
nowadays it's hard to find the masters because a lot of it was shot on stuff that would catch fire or was easily destroyed, damaged by humidity. So they have to do a negative, a positive, and then a transition. Then they go and find clips of the earliest versions of those films, not maybe the master. They're lucky they find the master, but if not, they go and find the earliest cuts, which it degrades the more you make, and they layer it. And they do, this guy is a digital master. He works for films and stuff. This is a hobby, but he has a current cut of Star Wars that he's trying to get Lucas films and Disney to release. But I've seen segments of it where you can watch side by side from a theatrical version, which is supposed to be the best version, and his cut. And there are stickers, there are scars, there are things that are on devices in Star Wars, the first film, that through generations have disappeared. You don't see, remember the one on Yavin where the guard is standing out on the little turret and he's looking out and the Falcon flies by? Did you know that has stickers on it? Most people don't, because by the time it was re-released multiple times, they had disappeared from the cut. So then when Lucas kind of went and digitally remastered them, it was just taken out because when they tried to remaster it, they couldn't find what it needed to get that. So they just kind of matched the background of the metal and overplaced over the fuzzy areas and just looks smooth and clean. His version has the originals, the stickers and the things that are on that tower that aren't on our later releases. But it takes years to do that. And he restores film for, we talked about this before, the Library of Congress and things like that. He also does work for NASA. He restores film footage of like the Apollo missions and everything else. And I sent Vince this link because I'm like, I just want him to I want to see what he does. There's like elements that are just there, like when C-3PO comes out of the oil bath. that just are gone or missing. Even on my my Ultimate Star Wars edition, the Blu-ray, it's just not as good as what he's done. Um, so that goes back to what you guys were talking about, is when you redo something, quality is not always what you think. If your masters have lost part of the quality and they clean that up and it disappears, you're getting another version of that film instead of it really truly being restored to its original format. And we've lost so much.
But if nobody on the planet remembers those things, do they matter?
Well, that goes into the whole thing about digital versus physical too, because there's things that we have that are physical that are eventually just going to blink out of existence, that if there's no digital copy of it, we'll never be able to have again. I mean,
Right.
there's games like that right now that, people are trying to make, free copies online. So at least there's some kind of record of it, but not free, but, they're at least kind of trying to document it, that it
And then you got
exists.
the emulators.
Yeah.
I mean, music's going to go that way too at some point. Whatever.
It's
We've
already
lost-
going there.
Yeah.
Well, it's just that we lose
Comics, definitely.
We've lost a lot of recordings by classic artists, musicians that we'll never hear again, unless somehow
Universal
they.
Fire. The 2008
unless-
Universal Fire.
Well, there was one guy. He had every master of his recordings and what sessions he did with other artists. He kept them in his house. He died. They were trying to clean that collection out to organize it and give it over to the musical archive people. The house caught on fire because they were doing some repairs and it all burned. And all they walked away with was the first couple of truckloads that they had taken out. Everything else is gone. There's no other masters of this. He recorded them in his own studios in his house, and they're gone. There are movies that people watched when they were kids that are gone because they couldn't find the actual original copy. I'm sorry, there's a cut of King Kong that had footage in it that was removed because audiences of the time were so shocked by it, and that cut is gone. You'll hear people go, "Oh, I know that somebody's going to find it one day in their garage." Today, up to the today, it has never been found. There are tons of stuff that was lost
like
to history.
Doctor Who is a good example.
Yeah.
With,
There's complete episodes that nobody can find.
Yeah, they're hoping that
Well-
people will have like recordings of it on VHS that they can try to
Well,
grab
BBC,
and remaster.
yeah, BBC didn't take care of it. They never thought that was going to be.
No, they recorded episodes on
and
them.
they recorded over it, or some of them were burned and destroyed, thrown out in the trash.
I have a personal connection to that whole concept. My grandmother, Grandma Jean, she was an actress way back in the day. She was in almost 24 movies, I think it was. Of all the movies she was in some capacity, there's only one that's a physical copy, and I have it.
I did not know that. I knew.
Yeah, she spilled the beans. I remember how all those years she was talking about not, having us do practical things with our lives, not worry about being rich and famous and musicians and actors and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It took her right before her when she passed to finally come clean as to why. And one movie that's available that I actually have and I've distributed among the entire family is a movie called You'll Find Out, and it's a Kay Kaiser film. She was in several of the Kay Kaiser films. Most of those you can't find.
Yeah. It was like,
I mean,
but
several of the films that she had prominent pieces in are gone. And I had no clue about it. And the minute I found out about it, I went on the hunt and I found You'll Find Out. And she knew that I had it, but she'd passed before I was able to get a copy to her. And to this day, anytime Dad comes across somebody in the family who wants a copy of it, he calls me immediately and says, "All right, put it on DVD, get that to him. I don't care what it costs."
And when you think about like MGM and their library that they've archived stuff that they're never going to re-release,
Right.
how many films are in those type of archives that I watched as a kid or I watched with my family, and they, but now whole generations are never going to get to see them because of one thing or another. Some of it sometimes gets tied up because of legal, who actually owns the rights.
Hey,
Yeah.
Dad. Let me switch computers so Anna can get on here. I'm gonna stop the recording here, and I can continue in the other room. So, just to continue now with the topic, since we're recording now, movies that you guys watched that were, like I was trying to do at the beginning, impactful, things that like change your perspective on cinema or made you more of a cinephile, someone who enjoys movies.
Well, I'm going to say one thing and I'll back out because I think I've already said what I feel. And these guys should talk.
And I'll
Sure.
edit some of
You
that
sure
stuff.
have.
When I was 5 years old, I was very ill. I had a 204 fever. My mom was working. My dad ran a car garage so that he had an apartment up behind where it was their office, but it had a bed if people needed to sleep. It had a TV. It had a kitchen. And so I was sleeping on this little couch, and he or one of the ladies would come up and check on me. And it was really the first science fiction movie I can remember ever watching. And I had a fever, so it distorted everything. And I watched George Pal's War of the Worlds. And that movie was it for me, because having that kind of a fever dream, it made everything on the screen that much bigger and brighter, and the aliens looked so much more menacing. And I remember my dad coming up, checking me, giving me a little bit of I forget what they used to give, because they didn't give you aspirins and stuff. It might have been aspirins for fevers, because there wasn't a whole lot of product out there to fight a fever besides putting a towel or taking a cold bath or a wash. And I didn't look at him. I didn't notice him. And I was just staring at the screen, and he was like, "Are you there? Are you okay? Oh my, is this the fever?" And I was like, "Get out of the way of the TV." And he goes, "What?" I said, "I'm trying to watch this." He goes, "Okay." And he walks out to the shop. And that movie that set my whole life. Right from that moment on, science fiction and horror, models, comics, movies, you name it. That was what I was about. So I'm done. Now let them talk.
I'm not sure. I mean, I remember my earliest movies being like Jaws and The Exorcist and Star Wars. I don't know. One of the first movies that I know made a real impact on me was Enter the Ninja. It was early 80s, I think 81. And it was, this was shortly after cable had actually gotten started. And Dad went, you know, we're going to get it, check it out. And this movie, it was, for me, it captured a lot of things that I kind of into and stuff like that. But the story of it and when I went back and later on figured out was more accuracy. This was a movie that I ended up sitting through entirely, knowing that my bus was coming for school. And the minute it hit the credits, I bolted down the street and barely got on the bus. It was the first movie that I remember that gripped me so much that I was willing to risk not going to school or being late or having to walk to Southeastern from Morley, you know, that type of thing.
HBO, Showtime,
Probably
and Skinamax before it was called Skinamax.
And it was at 95 and 96, the the wavy line channels.
What are you doing? Shh. If I look at it long enough, the channel will come in. Well, what are you trying to watch? And then it'd be there. My dad go, "Oh, okay."
Do I need to leave?
And walk out of the room. And I'll be like, and then I can remember my brother's going, "Did it show it?" Yeah, it showed it, but it went fuzzy again because my Mike or Gene go get a drink and it come back. I missed it. And we'd all just sit around this fuzzy television waiting for that channel to clear for 30 seconds. Yes. Adolescent youth.
This is we edited out. Don't worry.
Why?
I
Don't
think-
edit that out. That's fine.
I think you just edit all your dad stuff out. That'd probably be the best.
Then we just sit there and watch you.
I mean, you're right because you talk most of the time.
Because
Mark wants to be in the spotlight too.
Yeah, Mark wants to be in the spotlight. Say something
Um,
important, Mark. Come on.
I think my first two were really, and I think that these two got me into sci-fi, superheroes, all that kind of stuff. Was Superman and the first Star Wars. I think I went and saw Superman at the drive-in theater like 3 or 4 times. I don't remember how many times I saw Star Wars. I was like 5 when it came out, so you know. But I think that those are the two big ones that got me started into everything.
I'm gonna brag. 22 times that summer. 22 times. I was
Okay.
there until they kicked me out. They would call, "Who's your parents?" It's my mom. Is this? Here's the number, because I didn't want my dad coming up there to get me. Your son has been in this theater for 4 showings. You need to come up and pay, and take him home. I was obsessed with Star Wars.
Is that really a brag though?
It is a brag because I
Is-
can say I was one of the
Well,
ones
because back
who were
then,
there.
it was the whole thing. How many times do you see Star Wars? I mean,
Mm.
you can see the old TV thing stuff about the damn advertisement got on the news about, oh, how many times you see it? I saw it this many times. I
Mm.
saw it 12 times. Little kids saying it back and forth. But
All right, here's a question. What movie have you seen the most?
Me?
Mm.
I know
You
what
want
mine
to-
is.
You really want to know? I'm a
Sure.
grandfather. I've watched Wally about 1,000 times.
Okay.
I've watched Cars about the same. There are movies that when you have a child, you
And grandchildren.
you spend days in
Yeah.
front of
All right, so
a
let's
movie.
let's exclude the movies that you had to watch for your kids.
Yeah, not stuff you had to watch, something you wanted to watch. Mine, History of the World Part 1, I've seen it 162 times.
Jesus.
I haven't seen it that many, but me and your brother watch that movie quite often because we quoted it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
I guess you can tell how often I watch the movie by how many times I quote the dialogue from it,
Right.
which has gotten harder to do as I get older.
That right
It's
there.
a toss up between Star Wars and the first Indiana Jones, I think.
Okay.
But then I've watched, I don't know, Godzilla movies. I don't know how many times. As my granddaughter calls him, the googly eyed Godzilla, the original.
show us stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I watched those. I don't know. I quit counting.
Mark, you want to go for yours? I'm still trying to think because
Yeah, I'm trying to think of mine too, because I know I've seen The Crow a crap ton. I mean, I don't think I've seen it 162 times, but you know. I love Edge of Tomorrow, so I've seen that a bunch of times. Yeah, I don't know.
Is that the one? Rinse, live, die.
repeat. Yeah.
Repeat.
With the,
Yeah. I think that's a great movie that I don't think got enough. I think it was
Well,
very underrated.
Yeah.
Donnie Darko.
Yeah.
Well, I saw Donnie Darko a ton of times.
I actually watched that for the first time last month.
Nice. What'd you think?
I loved it. I mean, I'd been wanting to watch it for years, and I just was like, it's on Tubi, and I said, you know what, I'll check it out. And
There's
I loved
2 versions. See both. Find out which one you saw and see the original or see the extended cut because it changes the movie a bit.
Yeah, it does.
Extended. But I remember like Taps. It was like back in the day when Showtime, HBO, and Cinemax were really the only thing on cable. They replayed a lot of the same movies over and over again. And if they were on, I would sit there and watch. Sometimes because I didn't want to have to get up and go slide the dial back and forth to try to find something, or because I really enjoyed it. Any Mel Brooks movie I've watched Robin Williams movies. I watched them over and over again. Some movies you watch so much that they like Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I'm a big fan of John Candy, and I can't watch that movie anymore because I just miss him, and I miss the movies he made, and the joy I got from watching John Candy all the way from SCTV on. I'm the same way with Robin Williams. There's just certain Robin Williams movies I just can't watch anymore.
Well, according to Gar.
Yes.
I have
Well, and
a
I
hard time-
love Popeye.
Yeah.
Popeye was a good one. What about you, Vince?
So it's really hard because there's movies I watch every year. Like I mean, like,
Honestly, the answer is Terminator 2. I know what it is.
you know, the sad thing. All right, I'll name the top 5 movies that I probably watch the most. Terminator 2, because that's a whole thing we'll go into. But Terminator 2, Big Trouble in Little China, The Thing, Back to the Future, and The Matrix would be just the first Matrix movie. I mean, even though I like all 3 movies, but for a while there, like I remember when The Matrix came out, I just was watching it over and over and over again. And then, but yeah, out of those, probably Star Wars. I mean, A New Hope over and over again. That's probably the one I've watched the most. Besides Terminator 2. I mean, those are close too.
And that's a sign of a really good movie. That is a good sign of something that will be timeless.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
It's cult level or whatever, if it's mainstream. When you're
Well,
able to watch it that many times,
Mhm.
And never be bored, never
Never
you
be
know, just,
bored, never
it's
fall
on in the
asleep.
background, but you're not paying. But people have their favorite Christmas movie that they play every year.
It's Die Hard.
Yeah, Die Hard,
Die
Lethal
Hard.
Weapon.
Well,
No, just Die Hard.
Die Hard and It's a Wonderful Life. If I don't get to see those 2 movies at Christmas time, it doesn't feel like Christmas.
Come on, break his freaking neck, Riggs. Come on.
But
every Father's Day I watch the Godfather movies.
I should start making it a ritual to watch Groundhog Day on Groundhog Day.
Well, horror for me, it's always Halloween, The Thing,
Yeah,
Prince
well-
of Darkness.
Halloween,
Uh,
I always watch Halloween. When Colin and I were younger and hung out, before we went out trick or treating, or after we got out. I mean, because we didn't just go trick or treat. We were out. It was an event for
It
us.
was an event.
We'd come back, and at midnight, MTV always aired Night of the Living Dead, the original black and white movie, and we had to be back to watch that because that was our Halloween movie. Then there was Trick or Treat, which was a great movie, a great soundtrack.
I have it on DVD.
Same here.
Remember how people used to compare me to Mark Price?
No, I know they compared you with other people, but
Like the guy in Meatballs, which was the other one that I was.
yeah.
To. But after Trick or Treat came out, a lot of people, are you that guy from that movie? No.
What,
Well,
Gene
remember-
Simmons? No, I'm joking.
loading up the car and going to the drive-in and just watching movies over and over because you had the first movie, you had the middle movie, then the third movie was a rerun of the first movie. And I went and saw The Warriors that way, and it was a ritual with Donna and all some of the people. We saw that movie as much as possible because we loved it. I do miss that kind of ritualization when it comes to a movie, like when Terminator 2, which Vince wants to talk about, so we'll talk about it. When it came out, I wanted to go see it, but I didn't have the money. The kids went to go to their moms to visit, and in the middle of the night, somebody's beating at my door, and I'm like, "Who is it? Hurry up and open the door." And I was like, okay, I don't recognize your voice when you say it like that, and it doesn't make me want to open this door. And then I heard Russell was like, "Come on, open the door." And I was like, "Oh, it's Russell." Open the door, and it's Ray and Russell. They had just gotten back from watching T2 at the theater. And I literally was yanked out the door. You're coming with us. They didn't tell me where I was going. I was like, can I lock my door? Yeah. So I locked the door and they're pushing me down the stairs. We drive to the theater and I go, what are we going to see? He goes, you'll see. And then they already had bought the tickets. We went in, we watched it, and they had already watched it all day long. They had gone off together and disappeared. They were watching that movie. And all of a sudden, I'm watching it and I'm blown away. And it was the last showing that night. And I really wanted to watch that movie again. So immediately when my kids come home, guess where we're going? And then we would go, we went and saw it there. And that kind of, I do miss that spontaneity of, hey, this is really great. And Ray was great about that because I saw so many good movies just because he was like, I'm coming to get you. Just be ready to go. We're going to go see a movie. And I'd go. And if I saw it and I liked it and it was appropriate for my kids, then I would take them to see it next. So,
well, and that's that thing too, is that like back then, I mean, movies in general, you know, you may have a review from like Siskel and Ebert, and there may be some kind of article review on it in the newspaper and the Chronicle or something, but it was really about word of mouth. And that was what was really cool, is like you're hyped for it and you want to go see it. You weren't so like saturated with all this information from a movie.
Right.
And your opinion of the movie wasn't based on, oh, I like this person and, you know, I think what they think is great, but you're not thinking for yourself.
Yeah, I mean the exposure that we had to it back in the day was basically trailers. I mean, that's one of the reasons that the Super Bowl commercials were great back then, was because you get these awesome movie trailers. And then of course you could go, you know, if you decided you wanted to go see it, you'd either have to call the number and find out what the times were, or look it up in the newspaper. There wasn't anything about the internet. You didn't have to worry about somebody spoilers. You know, everybody griping every Friday because they don't want to see spoilers for WandaVision or you know, the new movie that came out. So it was just so much easier to enjoy a movie because it wasn't spoiled for you.
So there's movies that really impacted my life, and I know I kind of touched briefly on this a little bit earlier, but Terminator 2 was one of them. I remember we went and saw it. I was instantly attached to John because, like, you know, I know some people may not know this, but if you pay attention to the beginning of the movie when the T-1000 shows up and he's sitting there typing in, looking up John Connor, it says he's born in 85. He's 10 years old. The movie takes place in 95. So if you follow along the storyline, he's 12 years old when Judgment Day happens. Not this whole like, I was 13 when the Terminator came and got me. No, it literally says in the movie he was 10 years old. Well, I was 10 in 91. So I could relate with this kid who was 10 years old. And then, you know, you had Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I've seen him in Predator and all this stuff. And because of my dad letting us watch these great movies that we, you know, probably shouldn't have watched when we were 10.
Okay, you can edit this part out.
But the but the thing is that like you know, when the T-800 at the end of the movie, you know, after they killed the T-1000 and dropped them into the liquid metal, you know, and him goes, I can't self-terminate. You're gonna have to lower me down. I'm sitting there bawling just like John is. I'm like, this is crazy. This character, I mean, this machine that's now more human than you know, what he was when he first started. I remember it was funny because later on, my friend Billy was like, he was obsessed with it too. I remember there was action figures. It's like, why is there rated R action figures? I mean, that's a whole topic on its own, but we loved it so much that we convinced our teacher to do a play, let us do a puppet show. And I'm sitting here drawing all the characters of stuff. And somewhere I have this VHS tape, and I don't even know if I'm going to be able to find it, that has us doing this whole play of the whole movie. And it was hilarious. But that was one of those movies that just like, besides like Back to the Future, helped me with like my love for time travel. And like when I see things that has to do with time travel, I'm like, this doesn't work. Sometimes things will just take me out of the experience, based off James Cameron's theory of how time travel works. But and I just couldn't get enough of it. Anytime like Dad would tell me about what was going on in the books or the comics, the Now comics back then, the Cinefestique magazines that Dad would get with all the special effects, I love it. I ate it up. But I just watched that movie so much. It's crazy. I mean, just like Star Wars and Back to the Future.
All right, quick attachment there. What did you think of the concept of time travel in Infinity?
Are you talking to me or Vince?
Vince? The way Tony Stark figured it out and they used the quantum stuff. I mean, what was your thought on that?
I was okay with it. I guess the thing is for me, for that movie, I mean, the Marvel movies have their own kind of like essence as far as what they do. It's just exists in the Marvel universe. I don't, I never question like how does Superman fly? I know this goes back to a conversation we had before, but it's like, I'm okay with it. It's like, Iron Man getting knocked around. Does he have like inertial dampeners or things that are going to pat him? I mean, I'm sorry, but if the Hulk punches him, he's going to just explode in the suit, so it didn't really bother me. I was okay with it. Time travel that takes me out of a movie would be Terminator Genesis and Terminator not Salvation, but the last one. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that Skynet's going to send back a Terminator, multiple Terminators. But if you read any of the established lore and canon about it,
or the scripts,
Skynet only had time to send out 2 Terminators. That's it. The T-1000 and the first Terminator from the movie. Doesn't matter how much time travel changed. I mean, how much they pushed it back or forward or whatever through time. Skynet was only ever to do this. And John only ever sends back Kyle and the first Terminator. So
and the T-1000. So he sent back 3. Sent back Kyle. Sent back our first Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then the T-1000.
And then
they only found that out in the script and book when they were walking with the reprogramming Schwarzenegger's character to be the protector instead of the destroyer, and they see something dripping. There's a body-shaped cavity. They see something dripping. One of the guys points his gun up there to see what it is, and it drops on the barrel of his gun, and it mimics the barrel of the gun. And what I loved about that moment was John going kind of having like a lucid dream or something, because at that moment time caught up with him, and he remembered that they sent the T-1000 back.
But the thing about Genesis was the fact that the moment they left 1984 to go to the future, because they destroyed the first Terminator, they destroyed the T-1000 that was there in the past, and Pops didn't get caught and taken in by Cyberdyne, Skynet would have ceased to be. Because the way time travel works in that universe, I'm sorry, but unless, Skynet John was sent and jumped at the same time they did or something, it wouldn't have worked. It wouldn't have worked at all. There would have been no Skynet John. Skynet would have ceased to be. I know this is going into a deep Terminator rant, but sorry.
Well, I'm going to say something, because you know how I am about time travel. And if it's done well and plausible, I like it. If it is so full of holes and it's just a convenience plot device, doesn't work. The problem with the Marvel Universe, and the best part of it, was there were elements of it that were left on the cutting room floor. So they didn't get to put everything in about time travel that they wanted. Now you can go and look at the scripts, because they're still out there to find. You can actually buy them. You can go and look at their deleted scene, or you can watch the interviews with the directors, and they explain it. In the Marvel universe, if something happens, it was always meant to happen. But for every time you change an event, you create an alternative universe, which is why they have the multiverse.
Back to the
And
Future too.
the whole idea was that they were intentionally going to go back in and try to restore everybody, and they were going to manipulate time. And the Ancient One warned them that if you do this and you do not return everything back, you could destroy it all, because then it's going to unravel. And so once they did that, I understood the kind of framework they were looking at. Now, there's plot holes in it. Like, where did Cap go? Did he create an alternate universe till he got old?
Right.
With
Is
Peggy?
Sharon Carter his daughter now?
Well, yeah, but I mean, think about this. Remember, he goes to visit Peggy on her deathbed. So does that mean that there was another older Cap hiding in another room? Remember, she talks about somebody who's helping her out, but they never show him on camera.
Yeah,
Was that the old Cap? The old
that's
man
one
Cap?
of those things I was talking about recently.
So, but I like the idea that time is always trying to fix itself. It doesn't like too many splinters.
Or changes
So
to its.
it will eventually try to redirect you back to the original path. It will, you can pull on it, you might fracture it and make another alternate reality, but time will always try to fix itself. And if that's the case, then if you are manipulating time, you were always supposed to manipulate time. The only
Yeah.
downside to that is that when you think about what a paradox is, John sending back Kyle to become his dad in the Terminator created its own universe and became a time paradox. And everything that happened at that point should have been in the paradox universe. But they kind of went off on a tangent trying to create alternate realities that they could then turn into to reinvigorate the franchise. I believe they should have thought it through better and tried to explain that paradox first. Because there was a great movie that some of you might remember, and it was called Final Countdown. Kirk Douglas and a carrier goes through a time warp created by a storm, and they end up on the day Pearl Harbor is about to be attacked. And the captain is struggling with the fact that if he goes in and stops the Japanese, and can you imagine a modern Air Force carrier at that time? They could have destroyed the Japanese invasion fleet, then went in and destroyed Japan, all with what they had on the ship. But because if they did that, they couldn't, there's no guarantee that if they ever could go home, that the world they go home to would
Will be the same place they left.
So he decides they're going to do it, damn it or not. He's a U.S. person. I'm going to do this because this is what I'm supposed to do. And time throws them back into the future to their proper time. That's what I mean by time kind of pulling you back to get back, keep it in sync. But in the end, they throw in where one of the pilots got stuck in the past. He creates a company. That company is the company that sent Martin Sheen's character to the aircraft carrier as a observer for some new technology that's on the carrier. And it was meant to happen all along. And at the end, he goes in and the car shows up on the pier to pick him up. And there's the pilot as an old man. And you get that that originally happened, and that time has made sure that it happened. There's a movie, I can't remember what it's called. It had Christopherson in it. And it was a Earth that was on the brink of dying. So the people there send people in the past
Millennium.
millennium. And that whole movie, the way they treated time is every time they changed time, there was a time wave that came through, and that became the new present. And not everybody would remember that time had changed. There were certain people who had just different wiring in the brain, and they would have all those memories of all those universes. And they'd either end up being mad, or they would end up over time forgetting those that no longer exist and only existing in the real universe. And I like that idea too, of a time wave that's constantly correcting as things are happening.
The Butterfly Effect is a great time travel
Yeah,
movie.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And that goes to Ray Bradbury, who's the father of, besides H.G. Wells, of time travel. And H.G. Wells' time travel was kind of just straight linear. It wasn't a whole lot of thought that went into it. But if you think about Ray Bradbury's The Distant Sound of Thunder, which is where a company invents time travel, it's a normal thing. They take hunters back into the past to hunt dinosaurs and everything, but they only hunt those things that they witnessed dying that won't change the timeline. And they create a walkway where the hunters have to walk. They can't step off, because if you do, you could hit a butterfly, you could hit an insect, and that would have that ripple effect through time, the butterfly effect. And I always will believe that the person who had written Butterfly Effect had that in his mind, because it's such an old story and it's a well-known story. And when they came back, because he messed up history, America no longer spoke English. There was a authoritarian had won the presidency, and the world was a much horrible place. And there was no way to fix it. So,
well, and then you got I only bring this up, but like the time travel in Dragon Ball, where it's you never actually go back to your past. If you were come to the future, you go to an alternate past. You don't change your future or the current timeline you come from.
That's the same thing with X-Men. When Cable came back in what's his name? The one with the M on his Bishop.
Yeah.
A lot of that was that they went back to change things, and they go back to their own time, and nothing had really changed. Apocalypse was still controlling everything. So I think that's been a mainstay in animation and a little bit of Marvel, that you can go back, but you can only change a future timeline. Your timeline when you return home is going to be your timeline. And like Dragon Balls did that the best. No matter how many times
Trunks went back
and fixed the world for the better, the minute he went home, he still came home to his mom being dead and everybody having died.
But on a different topic, so I know when I talked about event movies, what are each of us like describe a movie that was memorable that we all went to see, or most of them went to see, that was like a big thing, like when y'all went to see Empire Strikes Back, or we went to go see Army of Darkness, or because Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman, we went and saw that.
I think that a lot of, almost everything we went and saw back then, we went with big groups, whether it was all of us or different, you guys and Ray, or me and my friend, my other friends. Like they were all big movies back then. I don't recall really going to a movie with just one or two people it
Mhm.
was always like 5 or 6 of us going together.
And then we'd end up meeting people there that we knew, and we'd all kind of set with them.
Yeah.
One thing I got to say, and this is really wasn't a great movie, but it was, what was it, In Dreams?
Oh yeah, that was.
And we're sitting there, we're watching it. We've a whole row is nothing but us and our fans and family. And Jason had just was kind of watching everybody and seeing their reaction at the film. And there's a scene where a guy gets a screwdriver through the eye. The woman stabs him in the eye with a screwdriver to get him off of her. And everybody, well, at first we didn't realize it, but Jason is busting up over here, laughing so hard he's shaking the row of chairs we're in. Because Jason was a big guy, and when he laughed, he shook. We had all went with the same hand over the same eye, and he said, "I'm watching what's happening," and I turn and look at it all, and all y'all are going, boom, 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 all the way down. We all did it. And I was like, we all busted up laughing after that was over, because that's when a movie is effective, when it can affect everybody in the same way. We all got that same primal thing out of it. So that is one of those things I like, where the group that you're with adds to the entertainment part.
Yeah,
of
the
it,
extra experience. Yeah.
experience of it. And that wasn't a great movie. It
No,
wasn't
but
a
it was.
blockbuster by no means, but it was a good movie.
It made us hate apples for a little while.
And I still can't stand apples. This movie, they're hiding in an apple orchard. There's rooms, a barn full of rotting apples, right? And you smell them, because we're so used to that scent of a overripe kind of rotting apple. Everybody was going, "Do you smell apples?" And it was our mind
Yeah,
was
sometimes.
making us smell what we were watching. Thank you.
It's
And
an apple for you.
I now can't stand apples because of that, because it was so many of them. Your mind goes, "This is what that's like," and you're like, "Ugh, I can't smell that smell."
All right, here's a quick attachment, I guess we're going to call it. Something you've done to increase your experience going to a movie for a movie. Like, okay, I can give my example first.
Okay, go ahead.
First X-Files movie. Okay? I went to the comic shop in Oswego, bought a 3-foot blow-up alien. It squeaked when you moved it. Blew it up, sat at the seat next to me, pissed off everybody around me, and management came and had me deal with it. Loved it. Had a great time. Big blue alien sitting in the seat. Squeak, 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 squeak.
Well, I remember sometimes the theater would be so full you couldn't do something like that. But there were people who dressed up. We dressed up. We brought props and we did all that thing. You know, I went to Rocky Horror and did that whole bit, and I've seen other movies where they've done the same thing. I mean, I think me and Ray were the only two people in the theater when we went and saw Shock Treatment, which was the sequel to Rocky Horror. And then it became a hit, and you couldn't get in there. And I remember sitting with Ray and we're watching it, and the theater's empty. And then next, all of a sudden, you can't get a seat in there to go, because it was a short time hit, because it was gone within 2 weeks.
How was it a sequel?
Huh? It is a sequel. It takes place in Denton.
I never heard of it.
Go look it up.
Okay.
It's a musical. Has Brad and Janet. It takes place in Denton, which Denton is only talked about in Rocky Horror. You get to go visit Denton in this. So,
Different cast probably.
no, it has the guy who described your balls, Big and Pendulum or whatever. He's in it. There are a lot of new casts, but Riff Raft is the main doctor in it. All the characters from Rocky Horror, the majority of them are in it, but it has new roles that don't mimic what was done in Rocky Horror. But go look it up. I got the soundtrack. I drive my kids nuts with it because I love it. And I have a copy of it, and I've loved it ever since we first saw it. Matter of fact, after me and Ray got through watching the movie, we went straight to one of the record stores and I bought it. I was going to say something about another movie, but I'm kind of at a loss. Mark, go ahead.
What are we talking about again?
A movie that you did something to help heighten the experience.
Like maybe dressing up or bringing props or whatever.
I don't think I've ever done anything like that. I know I've never dressed up. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever really done anything like that. I can't say that going to those midnight showings that we were talking about earlier were really all that much better. It just made you more tired and maybe not necessarily enjoying the movie as much. So I can't really count that. Yeah, I think I just go enjoy the movie. Or not, depending upon the movie.
So now I'm going to add mine.
I haven't even told mine.
I know. Heavy metal.
Wait,
I know you're not going to say this.
Wait, Vince, let little Vince go first because yours is going to take forever.
Go ahead, son.
All right, so I can say two. One of them would have been the fact that, like, and it's not really like something I did to enhance the movie. It just happened to be like the situation. So when the thing not the remake, but the sequel came out, or the prequel, they had turned down the AC in that room to really cold, so it just kind of gave into the ambiance of the movie and stuff. And so I just got a kick out of like sitting there freezing my butt off while I'm watching the prequel. But I think for me it would have been going to see Phantom Menace, and how I was able to skip school to go see Phantom Menace. I had the intergalactic flu was my note that I gave my teacher, because everybody knew. I mean, like everybody, like my teachers.
They were asking you, were you?
Everybody knew
at school?
I went to go see Star Wars, but I had to have a note. So my dad came up with this just ridiculous note that had like I was sick with this intergalactic flu and blah blah. I wish I could have like had a photocopy of it because it was hilarious. My homeroom teacher is laughing her butt off reading this. It's like, I know where you went. And then like all my other teachers like, how was the movie? Oh, it was great. But it was funny because we went and saw that movie like 4 times that day. It was the 4th time I fell asleep. I started watching it and then I fell asleep until like the, Darth Maul and Anakin, Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon fight. So
that's the only redeemable part about that movie.
But I can't think of another movie that
Anakin, it's over. I have the high ground, unless I'm hanging in a tube by my fingers. And I'm going to use the force flip, cut you in half. Yeah. And I was like, Anakin's the chosen one, and he can figure that one out. Okay. I love those movies, but I can pick them apart too.
Well, remember, he had already been through that situation. Anakin hadn't.
Yeah. But Maul had the high ground, so his logic shouldn't have worked. He had the advantage because Maul didn't expect it.
Yeah, that's because Ewan McGregor is awesome, and
yeah, he's if you look at some pictures, he's the Messiah. There's a joke people have to go look up.
Jumper, that's another really good movie that I think is underrated.
Oh, that's because you love Christian Hayden.
No, I just really like that movie. It's
it was a good movie.
Every movie we went and saw with him, you were just like,
whatever.
No, I'm joking.
Come on, admit it. Jumper's a pretty good movie.
Jumpers, I own it.
It was a good movie.
If I don't like it, I don't own them.
But, Dad, you're going to say your second one or whatever story?
No, I'm going to say mine, and it's something that is generational. But Colin's brother enjoyed doing this with me, and that was partaking of the wacky weedus before you go see movies like Heavy Metal or History of the World or
Nightmare Before Christmas.
well, no, I didn't do that. That was all there, you know, that you just looked at that and was like, man, I'm having a flashback. But no, we did that because there were some movies that the experience was in better movie viewing through pharmaceuticals. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But if you've never seen Heavy Metal, stoned out of your gourd, you've never seen Heavy Metal.
I think Heavy Metal would be really horrible to watch if you were on acid.
Oh no, I wouldn't. No, I don't think I could have handled that.
The wall.
That'd be really scary.
Not so bad. I'm not saying it.
I got better things to spend my money on, but that's just my. That's
Yeah.
because of my dad.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I taught you that you don't have to do things to enjoy life.
Life,
enjoy things.
yeah.
No,
you
but
know.
but just like you know, Vince, sometimes it makes it better.
Well, but I'm not going to tell my children
was-
that.
that
I
was the
wanted
case
them.
back in the day.
I wanted my
It's
children
still
to
the case now.
learn things, and then.
But
yeah, but yes.
But soon it's going to be legal anyway, so it doesn't matter.
And then Heavy Metal's going to make a comeback to theater.
Yes, it will.
Uh,
Donnie Darko would be a trip too, stoned.
I'm trying to think
Parts
of what.
it.
Yeah,
I'm a fan of David Lynch's stuff.
the
So,
bunny would.
I
The
like
bunny
David
would be
Lynch.
really scary.
The for a movie that. What was a movie that like scared you? That-
7.
Me?
Yeah. The next topic will be what would it be a movie that scared you, either made you leave the theater or freaked you out like after you watched it because your mind was just like
Okay, and it stays with you, and it
stays
haunts
with you and lingers. Yeah.
Any movie that I'm tracking with the person in the film, trying to figure out what's going to happen, who's the murderer, who's the bad guy, and I figure it out just as the person I've been kind of associating with figures it out, and he dies, and I go, shit, I would have died. At that moment, I realized I wouldn't have made it past this part in the movie. I'm just going to enjoy the rest of it. But there were movies that back in the day had a lot of H.P. Lovecraft influences, but weren't called Lovecraft movies. There was a movie that I saw that had a daughter who was crazy, and her parents had locked her in the attic. And when one of them died, the other one just walled it up and made it look just like part of the wall, and was arranging for food to come, and then the person who was bringing the food that would run it up through a bucket, they died. So she started eating rats and became very feral. Well, then this other family moves in. It's on a fishing village, and of course, back then the husband and wife are always having trouble. There's a guy in town who's attracted to the wife, but he's a bad guy. And then the creature, whatever it is trying to get to the kids, and the parents don't want to listen to the kids. And I thought I'd kind of figured that movie out, and through the whole last half of the movie, they flipped everything on me. And it scared me so bad, I ran around the house turning all the lights on. And I was about 14. And my dad woke up because the house was glowing in the middle of the night. And I wasn't supposed to be up watching scary movies to begin with. And he was like, why are all the lights on? I was scared. I was watching this movie. He goes, how many times am I going to tell you about that? He goes, I want you to think about something. If there's something outside and it's going to come get you, if you turn on a light, it knows exactly where you are. But if you were going to be trying to hide from it, hide in the dark. And I was like, damn, Dad, good rule.
Unless it can
And
see in the dark.
unless it can see in the dark, and then I don't have a chance anyway at that point. So we turned off all the lights. The only movie that made me run out was Jaws.
Yep. That's what I was waiting for you to say.
That head popping out of the hole. Oh man, I ran across people's shoulders and laps. I didn't bother with getting to the aisle. I just kind of cat-a-cornered, turned, ran over the people behind me until I could get to an angle and step on the ground and run out the door. The embarrassing part is as I ran out the door, I'm like, and I open my eyes, and there's a line of people waiting to come in to see the movie. And everybody in around the concession in line for other movies is now looking at this young kid. And I was more afraid of them than Jaws at that point. And I ran back in to the theater, and my brother Roger was like, "You're back?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, sit down and don't do that again. You made me ashamed to be your brother." And I was like, because my brother Roger would come pick me up, and we'd go see horror movies because he knew I loved them. And my dad would never let me go see those kind of movies. And Roger was just like, "Come on, we'll tell him we went and saw this," and we'd go see something scary. And that movie scared the bejeebus out of me, but I saw it a lot of times. After that, I had to kind of get it out of my head because I started having bad dreams about shark people learning to walk, and they were taking over the earth and they would kill people. And I had a real horrible dream about one eating my brother. So I realized that I had to see it and see it till I could overcome my fear of it. So I would take a bus, go to McCreeless Mall, and go watch it over and over again until it wasn't scary to me anymore. Until we went fishing, and my dad would go, "We're not going back in. We're just going to sit out here on anchor," and it would be in the rocking boat. And everything scene from Jaws would come back. I don't want to be here right now. But yeah, Jaws chased me out of a movie. Not even Alien could do that. And that was, I think, because sharks. I had read enough shark books in school and stuff to know that stuff could happen. You know, I knew that there was a story that it was based on a true story. So yeah, if it's the fanciful stuff, that doesn't bother me. I don't like possession movies at all, which is funny because I saw Amityville Horror I don't know how many times. Possession, I don't like real life things that could happen when it's something I enjoyed. I love going fishing with my dad. I love going camping. And then I saw Grizzly, and I was like, but I didn't run out of the theater with it. But sleeping in a tent in the woods in the middle of the night and knowing that this bear could walk up or a wolf could walk up and rip your tent apart and drag you off or eat you, those are the things that kind of bothered me.
Creepshow 2, The Raft.
That didn't bother me. That made me angry. You know that I love that the Raft, and they messed it up just like they did The Mist. Wait a lifetime for a movie.
Wasn't a theater, but the movie that stuck with me that made me say I can't do this ever again was a movie called The Day After Tomorrow.
Well, that was a mini series for television. Yeah. That was a messed up series back then because it was so realistic for us. Because you guys are too young to remember, but I remember when I was young, the Duck and Cover, and even as a young child, going, "What is this going to do?"
Yeah,
is it going to protect me from radiation or the firestorm that's going to come?
Which kind of reminds you of that whole thing with the sensei at the dojo right across from our comic book shop. He goes, "I'll teach you the way to handle a gun." And you finally got him to do it. He's like, "All right, what you do is you get on your knees and you go, 'I'm so sorry,' and you start praying to God and hoping that he's not going to kill you."
We were, yeah, because he kept talking about it, and all the students and us were in there, and they were all going, "He's really done it." And I was like, "Did you really, prevent somebody from shooting you? He goes, yeah, if you're fast, you can do that. And, you know, you can dodge bullets. And I was like, no. And then I saw somebody do it. But I was like, okay, you got to show me this. He goes, maybe one day. So every day when I went in, are you going to show it to us today? Are you going to show it to us? He even had somebody with a rubber gun, because we had been doing this thing of how to knock the gun out of people's hands or a knife. And he goes, okay, I'll do it. He goes, you stand here and I'll pretend to have a gun on you. And he's like, all right, now I want you to get down on one knee. And I was like, okay, this is going to be hard. How am I going to take the gun away from him on one knee? He goes, I want you to get down on the other knee. And I was like, okay. So now I'm kneeling in front of a guy with a gun. He goes, I want you to grasp your hands like this and bring them together like this. And I was like, okay. And I did this. And then he goes, these words are the most important thing you'll have to say, and it'll usually work. And then I was like, well, these better be magical words. And he goes, please don't shoot me. And everybody in the whole dojo was like, ah, and they all stormed off. And I felt like a fool. I'm sitting there on my knees praying, and he just laughed and walked out of the room. And I was like, you learned something today, Vince.
Movies like Seven, like I mentioned before, mostly the psychological stuff. Horror movies, slasher movies, those ghost movies, possession movies. None of that really bothers me at all because I know that it's not real. I know for a fact in my head that it's not gonna happen. Even to the extent of the animal attacks, like Vince was talking about just a second ago. I realize that stuff happens, but it doesn't happen anywhere near as often as some psycho just going nuts and shooting up a school or a restaurant. Or, I mean, it's happening all the time now. You know what I mean? So stuff like that bothers me more. So so Seven, I guess, is the biggest one that I can think of.
So Wonder Woman using her bracelets to reflect the bullets back at all the bad guys and shooting all those people, then clanging her bracelet together to obliterate the one guy with the bomb, throwing the debris out the window onto the people crowded on the floor. Didn't bother you?
And the bullets ricocheting off their bracelets and killing innocent
I
bystanders.
should have told
Sorry.
I should have told Colin to cover his ears at that part.
No, but okay.
I've heard and seen worse.
So for me, it goes back to one of my fears growing up, and it was dying alone. And not in the sense of like not having anybody, to spend my life with, but like literally being the last person alive and living in an empty world, that kind of thing. Well, movies that get me are more of the ones of like, I can't do anything about this if it happens. Like I anything where I can't control the situation. So one of the first movies that got me was, In the Mouth of Madness, just John Carpenter's movie about Cthulhu about the elder gods coming into the world and the madness spreading, and you can't do anything about it. Another one, John Carpenter's A Thing. I love that movie, but like if that thing was real and there would be nothing I could do to stop it.
They should have tried to electrocute it. It worked in the first movie.
I'm trying to think of like, okay, so I'll take it back. So one of the things that scared me when I was a kid, and it was just a nonchalant thing that would have been okay, but like there was a DuckTales episode, like 2-parter episode where they get this golden duck. Well, you can use the golden duck to turn things into gold. Well, eventually the golden duck starts reanimating and it starts just turning things into gold. Then eventually it gets to the point where the gold comes off of it and the whole world's just starting to spread and turn to gold. And it's like they're racing to try to get this duck to this fountain somewhere in Nepal or, an Eastern country. And so it would stop the spread of gold, because there's nothing that we could have done to stop that. And I wouldn't have known. I was like, there's something I can't win against. I guess that's my thing, is like not being able to control my own destiny is what scares me.
Now, I have one I want to ask people about. Have you ever watched a movie that you realized at its core is based on something else, and it kind of just, at that point, you don't enjoy the movie anymore?
Something that breaks immersion, or just
No,
social. I know,
he's
but
Like something's supposed to be a horror movie, but all of a sudden it's a political thriller or something like that, maybe.
Well, more I'm thinking of like Independence Day is nothing but a knockoff of War of the Worlds. Instead of it being natural bacteria and viruses that kill the aliens, it's a man-made virus. It is straight up, everything in that movie is War of the Worlds. Yet they don't acknowledge the source. And even when it came out and it was talked about, they were trying to, it's like Vanilla Ice trying to go, no, I didn't steal from Queen. Their B goes dun 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 dun, dun and mine goes dun 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 dun. Come on, give credit where credit is due. It was a unique take on War of the Worlds, but it was nothing but a War of the Worlds movie.
Well, but you say this all the time, that there's really nothing original out there.
Nothing
it's-
new
Yeah.
under the sun, but you
Right,
make
so-
it yours. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, everything is
But,
a take
you know-
on something else these days. I mean, so
what I
no,
was
that
trying to
doesn't.
get to is, do you feel there is any? I could have worded it another way. Is there original movies now? There are still original material out there. Is there something unique that stands out on its own merit and not off of something else?
yeah, John Wick for one.
No,
First one, at
I
least.
mean that John Wick is a take on it. I mean, there's I don't
Yes,
know, like
I
off
know.
the top of my head.
I know it's still
But there's an example of
Yes.
something that you could
Yeah.
equate to John Wick.
yeah, exactly.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's any reason not to enjoy John Wick.
Mhm.
It's a fantastic movie, but yeah, I'm sure if you really started digging into it, that there'd be something to compare it to.
Yeah,
The Matrix, even.
it's Neo having in a previous life in the Matrix.
Yeah.
And you could say the same thing for the Constantine movie too.
Yep.
Yeah, because that plot of saving somebody from hell and everything has been done before in other movies.
Right. Exactly.
But I like Constantine in the animated movies
Yes.
because he felt more like John Constantine to me than I liked the film adaptation, but I felt there could have been other John Constantine stories they could have done that would have been a little better, And Keanu Reeves would not have been my first choice for John Constantine, but I've been wrong before because when Beetlejuice, Michael Keaton was
And Batman,
picked to be-
you were
well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
To be Batman, I hadn't seen any movies where I saw him have that kind of a depth that would be required for a tortured soul until I saw Clean and Sober. Once I saw him in Clean and Sober, I was like, he's Batman. And I promoted him and I said, I think he's going to do a fantastic job. Sometimes you have to see them become
Mhm.
like
Christian
Wolverine.
Bale would be the same thing for when he was Batman, because a lot of people weren't. They did. I know. I remember when I was working at Best Buy, people were like, "I can't see him do this. I can't see him be a Bruce Wayne type character." I'm like, "Well, did you see Equilibrium?" No, go check out Equilibrium. I mean, you know,
Equilibrium,
you can.
yeah.
My
I
first
mean, that-
exposure to Christian Bale was Blue Velvet.
Which one?
Blue Velvet.
Blue. He was in Blue Velvet with.
He
What's
was
his
the
name?
reporter.
He was.
He was the
I have to go
reporter,
back and look
Ewan
at that.
McGregor was the old rock star.
Wow, I did not remember that.
And that scene on the roof kind of broke back Mountain, a lot of stuff for him for me.
Well, Dennis
I mean, yeah, it was
Hopper.
a great plot device and stuff like that.
Well, Dennis Hopper, what's his name? The guy who was in the first Dune movie. The movie was really about them. Those were secondary characters, right? Because I almost don't remember them being in the film. I was focused on the three main characters in that twisted love thing that was going on. I love Dennis Hopper. Every movie he's ever made has been fantastic. And his greatest movie of all is My Science Project.
He
He's
plays
done
the
that.
he plays the
He's
teacher, the
he's
professor.
done better, but I mean that's my favorite of his.
Well, that should segue into a whole other thing. And your favorite B movies? Yeah,
Favorite B movies?
yeah.
Anything Ed Wood for me.
I think you would have to say what era, Vince, because
Well, I look. I'll put it this way: 80s to 90s. Your favorite B movies. Just give me your top three, and then we'll start wrapping this up.
Favorite B movies. Maybe Plan 9 from Outer Space. I don't know.
Well, think of it this way: even movies that may not have done great in the box office, but it's kind of got a cult status now.
That's where my brain is trying to go. I'm going through, almost 40 years of bad movies that Vince and I watched back when you were little, and there was just so much great stuff. It's just, trying to figure out what is actually considered a B movie.
Crawl, The Beastmaster.
Beastmaster.
Those are the two that I think really I mean, I don't know if you consider them B movies, but they're kind of that low.
Yeah, they're not the
kind of low
low-key.
budget sci-fi type stuff. But I think those are the two that stick out for me the most.
Dad.
Slipstream.
Yeah. Mark Hamill and
Mark
Bill
Hamill
Paxton.
and Bill Paxton, and great, unique story, well acted. In the ending, I almost was rooting for them to save the day, and that's all I'm going to say. I'm trying to pick one from each type of genre. Slipstream was science fiction. I love Split Second, but it's not one of my top. From like the action flick of that B movie, I would have to say Rutger Hauer in Silent. What was the one where he was the Snake Eyes, basically before Snake Eyes?
Blind Fury.
Blind Fury before he ever existed. And then as far as real horror, I would have to go with I can't say The Fly because that was a big budgeted movie. I like Cronenberg, but it is
Nightbreed.
Yeah. I figured you were gonna bring up one of those. No, I'm Roger Corman. He did a movie where these people go to this planet where there is they go to rescue a downed ship, and when they get there, they find out that the planet is a daycare. It was where this alien race sent their kids to overcome their fears. And so these humans get here and they have to fight their fears, and they're not Galaxy of Terror. They're not able. Some of them are, Robert Englund before he was Freddy Krueger. I mean, great. I love him in the movie. But as far as horror, it had scary moments. It had great science fiction. And for a Roger Corman film, it had great effects for the budget. because Corman did movies on a shoestring and 10 or 12 day shooting schedule. He had to put some real time into this one.
Well, so for me, mine more slant towards the horror side. So you're looking at the remake, the 90s remake of Tom Savini's Night of the Living Dead.
Night of the Living Dead, yeah.
Tony Todd. And then you got Army of Darkness or Evil Dead 2, because that was a big staple in our house for one. Trying to think of another one. Technically, The Terminator was a B movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Except that it had people who went on to become
Bigger actors, yeah.
Well, not just that. The special effects houses.
Yeah.
Who worked on that.
But let me see. My last one would have to be because I don't really consider Fright Night a B movie, because it's a A class horror at the time it came out. It did really well, but like Near Dark would be
That was a good one.
And that was another one that had well-known
actors, but it didn't do well.
Right.
Well, they couldn't find the audience. I mean,
No,
they should have played up on the cowboy vampires, which they didn't in the original run. They played up more on the father, the girl, and the boy. And it was, kind of a love affair story and all that. But it really was about Lance Henriksen being, he was around from Billy the Kid days. And he was a vampire. And then everybody he bit became either part of his family or you were food.
Yeah. I guess the last thing I would add, and I would, if I would take back one of the movies, I would take back Evil Dead, and it would be Trancers. I mean, same. The funny thing is, Thomerson. Can't even say it.
Thomason, yeah.
Yeah, because he played the dad in Near Dark, but I just Helen Hunt. It was just I liked that movie. It was also the start of the Full Moon production stuff, kind of in a way.
Yeah.
I thought of another one of mine, Shocker.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, I love Shocker.
Yeah.
Mitch Pileggi, man, back in his early days.
Well, and it was Shocker, Ghost in the Machine. There were like 5 of those movies that were almost identical. Somebody was a serial killer. Somebody was a serial killer being executed in prison. Somebody was being experimented on and having a CAT scan, not a CAT scan, an MRI, and the lightning strikes the MRI and turns him into an electrical monster, which is what Shocker was.
Trick or Treat. I mean, of course, goes back to that whole.
Shocker's where he was executed.
Yeah, he was executed in prison because
during in the electric chair, the lightning gets struck at that time.
Yeah, but if you go and look, there's another movie where there's a serial killer who is taken in and he is in an MRI, gets hit, disappears, and the main hero is a hacker who the government has been trying to find, and he ends up trying to help the mom and the kid and the police so that he doesn't get arrested for some of the murders that the other guy did. And that brings me around.
I just can't remember the name of it.
There's another one I got to bring around. Movies where the hero, that even though the hero defeats the bad guy, he's going to go to jail for all those murders because he was a dummy and he touched everything. And these people who make these movies don't put any kind of forensic thought into it. Whoa, I'm going to take the knife out of her and look at it and go and drop it. You better wipe that damn knife down because your fingerprints are all over it. When the police come and find that body, they're going to dust it for prints and you're suspect number 1. There was a movie where this bad guy killed like 8 or 9 people and the guy was able to defeat him. And then the police are just patting him on the back. He's sitting there with a blanket over him. EMS is taking care of him. And I was like, do they not do crime investigations or evidence? Because he looks like he's the killer. I hate those movies. Because
Well,
Let's wrap it up.
yeah. All right, everyone. We hope you enjoyed our conversation about movies and memories. So keep the conversation going below. Like, comment, and subscribe. Tell us what your favorite movies are: horror, sci-fi, drama, whatever. Let us know. Thanks.
thank
Peace
you.
out.